Good morning. Good morning to those who are with us in the room, who are fewer than those that are with us virtually online. So I already can see the messages. I'm welcoming Nicolae Zachary, Vasile Popa, Feodosia, Pisci that are already in front of their computer screens or telephone screens and are waiting for the forum to start. The forum entitled Justice and Anti-Corruption Forum. It's an ordinary edition, which could become an extraordinary one if some ingenious solutions and ideas are found. The forum is organized, I think you can see, so it's organized by the government of the Republic of Moldova. The host is the Legal Resources Center from Moldova and the Swedish Embassy that is taking care of the processes and phenomenon in Moldova. I am Vasile Botnaru, Director of Free Europe office in Chisinau. I will moderate the event. I will stop now, though it's difficult for me to do so, being a radio person. But before presenting the speakers from the first panel, I would like to tell you an impression that I have regarding justice, reform, and anti-corruption. So, it seems that society knows everything about anti-corruption and justice, exactly like everything about soccer. But the society cannot go in the field and play soccer. I would compare with Sheriff, the star of Moldovan football. So all of us express our opinion, what should be done and how should be done. But it is the football players that go in the field and play soccer during competitions. So today's forum is an opportunity to allow the society to speak in a competent manner and for the relevant stakeholders to take into account the society's expectations and recommendations, because oftentimes the corruption perception index was measured, but it used to be neglected by the magistrates, by the judiciary. But it matters very much. This morning at Free Europe, Vladislav Grivincea had an interview where he spoke about our expectations from this forum. But now I would like to give the floor for the welcoming speech our high-level guest. So the President of the Republic of Moldova, Maia Sandu, will come first. Welcome to our forum, President. Also, Yannis Mazeiks, Ambassador of the EU to the Republic of Moldova. We have not got used to this rapid change that occurred. Many people are still thinking about Mihalko, but I am sure that Mr. Mazeiks has already made his entry with some speeches. And recently the European ambassadors have signed and urged us to vaccinate ourselves, to wear face masks. So we have a proof that we are following this advice. Katarina Frey, ambassador of Sweden to the Republic of Moldova, welcome. And Johnny Walsh, USA Deputy Assistant Administrator. I should not explain what USAID means. USAID is a trustworthy friend, helping Moldova both in good and bad times, but more in bad times. But hopefully we'll have more good times when you say that we have finished our mission and you can go on your own. And Vladislav Grivincea, President of Legal Resources Center from Moldova, a good advisor for the Minister of Justice. So, Mrs. Maia Sandu, please, the floor is yours. Good morning. And thank you for this opportunity to speak at the opening of the Justice and Anti-Corruption Forum. Today, the Republic of Moldova has the real chance to make profound and systemic changes in the judiciary. Reforming of this sector is priority number one of the government and of the citizens alike. After many failed attempts to do order in the judiciary, today we finally have the opportunity to move things. We have all the preconditions for that, including the most important thing, political will. Today, the country's governance, president, parliamentary majority, government wants for the judiciary institutions to become functional, independent, and to act with integrity and professionalism. This is what the society expects us to do. For this, citizens have voted, and this reform is our
societate. Reforma justiției.
The judiciary reform targets a specific area, but its effects will be felt by the whole society. Recovering the trust in the act of justice is a precondition for people to regain their trust in the state of Moldova. And this will impact investments into the economy, business development, tax collection, quality of public services, and finally the quality of life of our people in our country. Fighting corruption is also part of this equation. Corruption hinders the country's development. It is one of the main reasons of poverty that we can see around us. Our priority is to fight big corruption, to fight the criminals that have transformed the government institution in a source for their personal income. But this phenomenon should be eliminated at all levels. We have to eliminate corruption that people face on a day-to-day basis when they go to benefit from a public service. Corrupted officials that are used to get money from people's pockets undermine the trust of people in the state. Corruption distorts our values and gives us weird and crooked models that are used by some young people and adults as a guide. Some people do not pressure education and work anymore as a way to make a good life. They want quick, rapid, and sometimes unlawful ways to make money. Choose to avoid paying taxes or corruption. And this dangerous process erodes the moral basis of our society and should be stopped. The future of our country, prosperity of our people and of our state depends on our capacity to step in and act quickly in the judiciary and in fighting corruption. It also depends on the irreversibility of the changes made. These are processes that have to be done correctly, in strict compliance with the spirit of the law. And we, guided by our commitment towards people, are firmly decided to act rapidly with new, targeted and efficient measures. Changes in the judiciary and in fighting corruption have already started, and they will continue without any hesitation. And I have a message here for employees from the judiciary system and from law enforcement bodies. You have to make a choice. If you decide to help us with the change, I am positive that the transformation will take place quicker for the interest of everyone who is involved and for the benefit of the whole society. Together, we'll be able to change for the better things in the judiciary, in the justice sector. If you choose to be reluctant, resistant, I want to tell you that nevertheless the change will be made. The mechanism of performance assessment and assessment of integrity will be put in place, but the resistance will determine citizens to lose even more their trust in the sector, a trust that will be very difficult to recover already. So this is for our joint interest, for the interest of the country, to work together in the difficult process of reforming this important area. We do not want justice on TV only. We do not want to reach the extremes. What we want is for the law to be observed. All of the justice sector reform actions and actions to fight corruption should strengthen trust in justice sector and in the functioning of the law enforcement bodies. I understand that many of you, those of you who are working in the judiciary sector and in combating corruption, might be discouraged by the constant criticism that you hear in the society. It is painful to always hear a criticism against the area that you decided to dedicate your career and your life. To escape this criticism, to get rid of it, we have to make order in this sector and we have to regain trust in the justice sector. Now we have the appropriate political context to do so. I know that most of you care about your professional reputation and about your name, and I am sure that you would like to work in a different fashion than now. We have to stop the unlawful practices that have become a norm. We have to stop the favors, use of the professions and jobs for personal interest. It is time to work together to correct things in our country. In such a way, we'll be able to build together a functional country and a prosperous country where everyone has a chance to have a good living. And in a prosperous country, people from the judiciary sector also have a good life and are respected. This is my urge for employees from the justice sector. Help us to make the change that we have started. This time we will manage. We will do our best. We will use all the effort, resources, and political will for this purpose. The progress in this area is needed and unavoidable. Thank you very much. Thank you, President. Of course, Maya Sandu means not only the favorable context, but also the clepsydra that is measuring time and is measuring people's expectations. That is why all of us have to join our efforts and support this process, and that is why we have a very broad and extended support from abroad. And I think a proof to that is the presence of Yanis Majeks here. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. I would like to thank the organizers for organizing this event, which I hope will really become an annual and regular event to have a look for the stakeholders on the state of play in the justice and anti-corruption sectors, where formulations can be found on recommendations, where priorities can be also identified, and also ways how to engage with the civil society and the public at large. Madam President's speech reminded me of an old song of Bob Dylan, which was "The times they are changing." Because over the past year, since the last edition of this meeting, we have really seen unprecedented change in the Republic of Moldova, with the presidential and early parliamentary elections that brought a solid pro-reform government supported by a strong political majority on a justice and anti-corruption agenda. This means a unique opportunity, but also a high responsibility towards the citizens who have voted for these changes. so that your country is not plagued anymore by endemic corruption and vested interests. The authorities have the very difficult task ahead to restore trust of the citizens in the justice sector. And I will briefly talk about all three elements that I have just mentioned. First, the unique opportunity. There is a unique opportunity as there is general awareness that the situation in the justice sector cannot continue like this and that it needs decisive action. There are new opportunities for enhanced EU-Moldova relations, which was seen at the high-level engagement from the last months, including the EU-Moldova Association Council meeting on 28th of October. And at the Association Council, we have agreed to engage in regular dialogue on justice sector reform priorities and recognize the need for financial support to its implementation. Second, the high responsibility. With such an ambitious reform agenda, such as extraordinary evaluation of judges and prosecutors or uprooting corruption in all public institutions, the authorities of the Republic of Moldova have a very difficult task ahead. And this is mainly because it needs to both respond to structural problems and address the short-term desire of people for change. On the short term, the EU has welcomed several steps, such as the adoption of the constitutional amendments regarding the justice sector or the changes to the legal framework for integrity. The fact that the Parliament adopted the constitutional amendments after two failed attempts should not be underestimated. But now all the focus needs to be on the proper implementation, which means a new composition of the Superior Council of Magistracy, fully in line with the European standards and based solely on criteria of professionalism and integrity. We are also awaiting the adoption of the Justice Reform Strategy and Action Plan, which should, together with the Government Action Plan, offer the framework for the difficult reforms ahead. Any reform effort needs to be in line with international commitments of the Republic of Moldova and international and European standards. They also need to be explained to the Moldovan people, to the affected groups and institutions. The civil society should be engaged and involved in the process. The reform is urgent, but it should not be rushed. We welcome the commitment to make the fight against corruption more effective and to improve mechanisms and capacities to fight high-level corruption, as well as the recent steps taken to address political corruption. The EU delegation has talked many times in the last years about the need to end impunity for those who abuse official functions, who are responsible for human rights violations, such as the expulsion of the Turkish citizens, or for the perpetrators of the criminal schemes such as the banking fraud or laundromat. And we will never get tired of repeating. The finalization of the banking fraud investigation remains the litmus test for the justice system in Moldova, both in relation to the responsibility of perpetrators and recovery from those who benefited from it. The third element, regaining the trust of people in the justice system. The experience of other countries shows that while ending impunity and addressing high-level corruption is important, what people feel most directly are the aspects that are related to good governance and the preventive approach of dealing with the so-called small corruption. We urge the authorities to take a broad and comprehensive approach in the fight with corruption, from improved governance in state-owned enterprises to legal and transparent public acquisitions, to functional internal control functions in all state institutions, to strengthened whistleblower system, just to name a few. Regaining trust depends on many factors, from the ability to communicate to the general public, to the ability to counter disinformation, to dismantling the vertical control in the judiciary and prosecution, to empower good professionals with integrity who abide solely by the law. To conclude, in front of this unique opportunity and high responsibility, Moldova is not alone. The times are a-changing. The EU has announced an ambitious economic recovery plan for Moldova. The economic and investment plan for the Eastern Partnership region includes 5 country flagships for Moldova. These would be important drivers to address the interdependence between rooting out corruption, reforming the judicial system, improving the business climate, and fighting poverty. The EU remains committed to strengthening the political association and economic integration with the Republic of Moldova, based on the full implementation of the EU-Moldova Association Agreement for the benefit of its people. Moldova matters for the EU. Moldova is a country at our border and with whom we are closely interlinked. The EU wants to see a developing and flourishing country able to ensure a better future for its citizens, and I think the justice reform is a very key component of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Remarcăm această deviză, dacă vreți.
This quote, Moldova is not alone, and truly Moldova was never alone. Even in the hardest moments, we were with our partners, and we accept your opinion, Mr. Maizeix, that the civil society must see people who want our good and not to listen to other voices from the inside who don't support them but should support them. And this is the mission of the civil society, to recognize these voices, and the forum is an attempt to give voice to the institutions that have something good to say. Now we would like to invite Her Excellency Ambassador of Sweden in the Republic of Moldova, Madam Katarina Freid. Please, Madam, you have the floor.
Partners, friends, bună ziua. I'm deeply honored to attend this first day of the Justice and Anti-Corruption Forum, along with all you present, both here in the room and online. Sweden is proud to support this event for the third year. We believe that for the justice sector to develop, it is necessary to have a platform for dialogue where you can raise the most urgent challenges and together find solutions and ways forward. I'm very happy that despite the COVID-19 pandemic, our partner, the Legal Resource Center Moldova, has managed to organize this discussion also this year, jointly with the Minister of Justice. During these last couple of years, we have closely followed the reforms in the justice sector and the fight against corruption in Moldova. Several strategic documents and priorities have already been implemented. Many lessons have been learned, and many good results have been achieved. And there has been starting things. It is really changing and developing, as has been stated here already. But yet challenges remain, and they could still jeopardize the independence and professionalism of the justice system. We hear concerns raised by citizens at the local level, in the business environment, and by the civil society. They report on the problems such as selective justice, corruption and nepotism, impunity, lack of ethics, unfair promotion procedures of justice and prosecutors, bureaucracy, and other administrative obstacles to access to justice. Unfortunately, many problems that was also raised at the forum in 2020 are still present. Much work remains to ensure that the people of Moldova has an open, transparent, fair, and professional justice service. Sweden has been supporting democratic reforms, economic development, rule of law, and the respect for human rights in Moldova for the last 25 years. As a friend and an EU member, we also urge responsible government and authorities in the Republic of Moldova to continue the process of reforming the justice sector. A justice reform process is not an easy task. It is a continuous effort and yet fundamental for strengthening democracy and resilience in a modern society. To succeed, everyone needs to engage wholeheartedly, including by supporting the professionals within the system who strive for change and are the reform agents in various institutions. We look forward to seeing the new justice sector strategy come in place and render visible results for people all over Moldova. To ensure sustainable solutions and broad ownership, we hope that the reforms will be elaborated and promoted based on the principles of transparency, inclusiveness, and accountability, and will reflect as many perspectives as possible. I hope that this forum will be a space for an open and constructive dialogue between all participants here, be it in the room or online, from the government, the justice sector, and the legal expert. And I wish you all a really good and productive meeting. Thank you. Mulțumesc.
Mulțumim, doamna ambasadoare, și noi ne exprimăm speranța.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. We also hope that the reform will be achieved just like the Venice Secretary encouraged us not to do urgent things very fast, but to go slowly, and this process continues, the dialogue continues, and we have this guest at today's forum. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Johnny Wash, the USAID Deputy Assistant Administrator, but before I do that, I would like to remind you the fact that, and probably you, the audience, online and offline, you have seen the news that yesterday in Chisinau, Samantha Power, the new administrator of USAID, which is called the U.S. Agency for International Development, this is their full name, and Madam Samantha said yesterday in Chisinau, and I quote according to a translation, "The change produced this summer in Moldova and the citizens' election is a highlight, is a light spot in a world where democracy is at the moment in decline." And I think that her words are very good for today, for you, the representatives of USAID, and thank you so much for being here, to participating to our forum.
Your Excellency, my friends, it's such an honor to be here in Moldova generally, alongside Administrator Power, and specifically to represent the US government at this Justice and Anti-Corruption Reforms Forum. Madam President, in particular, like Administrator Power and I have been so thrilled and energized to visit Moldova at a time like this, and in support of your agenda to promote democracy, open governance, genuine justice, and in particular, the fight against corruption. And I would say that one quote from my president, Joe Biden, is very close to my own heart. It goes, "Democracy does not happen by accident. We have to defend it, we have to fight for it, we have to strengthen it, and we have to renew it." And I think that the people of Moldova, perhaps against all odds, chose to renew their democracy in choosing leadership that pledged, I think very sincerely, to serve the interests of the people rather than those corrupt forces that we've known all too well here for far too long. And since then, I think Moldova's remarkable struggle against corruption has resonated deeply in the United States. It bears mention that the Biden-Harris administration has itself elevated the fight against corruption around the world as a core national interest. That's a designation that American presidents have rarely, if ever, made so vehemently. And USAID echoes that. We've set up an anti-corruption task force, one of the most important efforts we're engaged on right now. And so the US government is so eager to find partners like we hope to have found in Moldova, who are equally energized to drive forward the cause of clean and honest and transparent governance. And all of us here are, I think, united in our view that corruption sabotages countries' development, it robs citizens of their dignity, it denies them justice. But I do believe that a forum like this, bringing together the best of Moldova's civil society, government, development partners, it really helps tell the world how serious Moldova is about this battle and resolve to win. And we want to help you win it. So to us, what are some of the key elements to look for in a really serious and sincere anti-corruption strategy that reveals a deeply committed partner? I would say reforms that increase competition in political and economic structures, even when that itself can be politically difficult. I would say measures that embrace all key actors represented in this gathering, government, civil society, media, others. I'd certainly say reforms that embrace dialogue and broad-based input. We often discuss the principles of the open government partnership, which can help foster dialogue between government and civil society. And I think that successful reforms inevitably in our country, anywhere, tend to require a civil society that commits to consulting actively and constructively on new policies and laws, while still working to hold officials accountable, as they always have. I think these reforms benefit from an independent media enabled by maximally open access to information, doing the crucial reporting, as we've seen so powerfully over the years in Moldova, that uncovers acts of corruption, that provides the public with information on reform processes, that holds everyone accountable. And finally, I think that successful reforms tend to benefit from international partners, we hope, working closely with all the actors I just named and coordinating with each other as donors. And we will certainly try to help countries like Moldova in every way that we can, especially at such a moment of great promise as this one. And I also want to say a word about justice reform specifically, so closely related to anti-corruption here and elsewhere, so close to the heart of our discussion. USAID is very committed to helping the Moldovan judicial system, as we have for years, to fulfill its own ideals of making independent decisions based on law, based on the Moldovan constitution, independent of outside political forces. And as one small example, just this September, USAID launched the Model Court Project, which is a $5.6 million investment for now, which is meant to help improve court performance and management. And two of the initial courts that we've worked with are striving, I think, effectively for better performance, for rigorous and impartial application of the law, and also for better public outreach to talk about what they're doing. And in the current climate, I feel the opportunity to build out programs like this and make a genuine difference in people's lives has never been better. And we're so eager to embrace their enthusiasm. We hope others will adopt their best practices. So I could certainly go on. You don't need to hear a rundown of every program that we're engaged in. I just want to close by stressing the view from Washington, including at quite senior levels, that Moldova stands at an important crossroads in its history, an immense moment of opportunity.
Din istorie și are oportunitate.
I want you to know, President and everyone, that USAID, the entire United States government, will continue to champion and support these crucial efforts to fight corruption, to promote impartial justice. And we really have taken notice, and the world has taken notice. We're truly thrilled to see what comes next. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Roș. Acum, pentru că și Europa Liberă există.
Thank you so much for your kind words. Europa Liberă also is supported by the American taxpayers, and I would like to say also that USAID and Johnny Walsh represent actually what is known as in politics the Pope's division. I think Johnny Walsh represents the Pope's division, and when Stalin was asking where is the Pope division, I think that their support is very important. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Vladislav Gribincea, the president of Legal Resources Center from Moldova. And also I would like to open the brackets. You will hear about it in the news because our colleague reports about many scandals, for example, in the British Parliament, where the speaker spoke against Boris Johnson and even threw some harsh words, and there was a polemic around the fact that they need to have a law which would stop the MPs to do consultancy for commission. After one MP from Boris Johnson's party was paid a huge commission for a consultancy. And this proves the fact that, yes, in other parliaments, scandalous things happen. There are signs of corruption. And when our audience says to us, but look at other developed countries, such cases happen as well. And I say, yes, this happened, but they have mechanisms to react react. The civil society is very active to react. The regulator has mechanisms to react. That is the difference, dear citizens. And we do not have this. We have the luck in quotation to not follow the mistakes that other countries did. And Mr. Gribincha said this morning in an interview, no doubt that we will make mistakes, but it's good to learn from other countries' mistakes. And Mr. Gribincha, I let you to continue and to say more about why we gathered today at this forum. Thank you so much. Good morning, dear Madam President, Your Excellencies, the ambassadors. Hello, Mr. Walsh. It's an honor for us to have you here today at the third edition of the forum regarding justice and anti-corruption. I remember very well the first forum, organized 2.5 years ago, where Madam President back then was the Prime Minister, and she was coming with the same message of encouragement and the need for change. This forum, organized together with the government, and us, our legal resource center from Moldova, we would love to see it a tradition happening every year. And your participation represents a support message, supporting the intention for change into good the justice sector of Moldova. Recently, the EU launched a support package, and the fact that the USAID director visits for the first time Moldova, and it's her first country visited since she took her chair, I think this is a very important message of support and the support that Moldova benefits of. It's obvious that we need radical changes of the way how Moldova is governed, if we look from the independence until today. And the experience of neighboring countries confirm that any reform of such grandeurs will have limited effects without having profound changes in the judicial sector, or if we leave the corruption untreated. Transforming the Soviet justice system oriented on state protection, oppression of people that think in a different way, into another system which does justice and protects the citizens from abuse, it's not an easy exercise, and it's not a short exercise either. On the other hand, tolerating corruption, just like Madam President said, just like Mr. Walsh said, tolerating corruptions erodes the trust in the state institution, and it's one of the main obstacles against citizens for citizen safety and country development. Actually, I should say that in Moldova we speak about justice reform for more than 10 years without making many changes, many essential changes. This happens because there was a lack of true political will. Now, in presence, I don't doubt the good intentions of the government, but also I don't think that only this political will is enough or good intention is enough. Just like in music or jogging, external policy or collective promotion of human rights, when we speak about justice reform, having only one ingredient, it's not enough. We cannot manage everything, at least in short term. Having a vision, knowing how the system is working, and the skill to understand what is important and what can be left to the side, cooperated with a good cooperation, communication, transparency, organization, and planning of the reform process can be equally as important. Resistance from the system will be big. We don't have experience of such reforms, and we already committed mistakes. People from the system which could become leaders of change are demotivated. They do not trust it. And it seems that we've managed to not find the right people who can take place of the demitted ones. And this means that the effort will be long term, and the reformers, the the champions for change will not resist. And this will mean that many people will see all these efforts as a failure. But I still believe that the fight for justice must continue, and there was never a better moment for doing it in Moldova. Recently, a law for amending the constitution was approved, which opens the door for many changes in the justice sector. We're talking about Prosecutors Council and the Judges Council will be re-elected, and the majority of key positions in the justice are vacant. This is at the same time with a unprecedented support of Moldova coming from the West and from overseas. On the other hand, the current government cannot fail. If this happens, the European road of the country will be jeopardized, and the hope that change is possible will be lost for a long time. To conclude, this reform is based on people that want justice, people that will do the justice. And more specifically, the essence of the reform is to help good people from this sector, that this reform is not done in order to take over the justice sector or to remove uncomfortable people, but this reform is done in order to increase the good people in the system, to involve them. This is why supporting and involving these people in the reform is crucial in order to make it irreversible change. And I trust that these progresses cannot be done halfway. Of course, the civil society has an important role as well. On one hand, to ensure a good information of decision-making factors regarding the decisions that they're taking, but at the same time to raise awareness and to raise red flags when they believe that a mistake is committed. And I think that an honest reply, an honest reaction when we honestly believe that this is a mistake, I think this reaction is the best help that anyone from the civil society can offer. And you, Madam President, you probably convinced yourselves that the independent press and the civil society, they were the biggest promoters of justice reform and anti-corruption measures in the country. Due to this, with the generous support of Sweden, we gathered here today and tomorrow in order to gather conclusions from the lessons learned in the past, from wisdoms of not only our systems but other systems. We are here to identify the best solutions for the reforms announced for the Republic of Moldova and to understand how reforming authorities or reformed authorities as well, how the development partners, how independent experts and civil society can unify the efforts so that the main dream of the Legal Resources Center from Moldova, which I have the honor to lead, their dream is to build in the Republic of Moldova a justice which will do justice to everybody and every single time, despite the circumstances and the context. Thank you so much once again, Madam President. Thank you so much, Your Excellencies and Mr. Walsh, for making the time in your agenda, your busy agenda, to come and join this forum and for passing a very strong message regarding the need of a real justice reform. I'm certain that the couple of thousands of viewers that we have online, on Zoom, on the social networks, are here to follow us with great attention, and I look forward to see the panel discussions. And here I remember what the predecessors of Mr. Majek said. Mr. Tapiola said this about 5 years ago, I think. He was saying that finally or ultimately everything will be okay. And if it's not okay, this means that we are not finally, we're not ultimately. And hope is something that characterizes us, and hope is something that Madam President has. She trusts this process, and we trust her as a president. Thank you so much, Mr. Gribincha. This is where the formal formal part ends. It's actually called opening words, but we've had strong messages from each participant. We would like to thank you very much for the words. And my job is to always go contrary to the speakers. And I know that Mr. Griblincha has an important role, especially in the society, to combat fake advisors, individuals who take a stand only because of political reasons, those who blame justice workers only because of their personal interests. And I think that Maya Sandu, when said this message, includes those people who are doing a lot of polemics and debates. They're manipulating the public opinion. I can assure you that we, the press, we and the experts and the civil society, we are going to take all of these individuals into consideration. We are going to report on them so that ultimately things will be okay, just like the previous EU ambassador said. Now I would like to launch the first panel. And this discussion part starts in a few minutes, so thank you very much. Aridat că eu la mine surdeam. Dar ce înseamnă divizia papală? Și Stalin, și Ziși? Cam tradus cum am auzit?
Good morning to those that have just joined us, skipping the first part. We are at the Justice and Anti-Corruption Reform. We are physically present on the address of Mihai Viteazu 15th at Digital Park. I am for the first time here, so I'd like to say that the forum is hosted by Digital Park, but the event itself is organized by the government of the Republic of Moldova, Legal Resources Center from Moldova, and the Swedish Embassy. The ambassador of Sweden made a welcoming speech in the first part of this forum. We also had a very clear message from President Maia Sandu, also Ambassador of the EU, Yannick Smajeks, and Johnny Olch from USAID, and of course Vladislav Gribincha, which is the executive director of the Legal Resources Center from Moldova, had speeches in the first panel. And now, in the welcoming remarks, and now we are starting the first panel entitled The Justice Reform into the Transitional Democracies. Well, we are still in transition. We do not know how long it will last, but it's quite long already. We have been in transition for the past 3 decades already, and only God knows how long it will last, how more it will take. But maybe we could make some future plans together so that we shorten this transition somehow. So let me tell you how we will be working from the technical point of view. But before that, I would like to invite the speakers of this panel. It is Sergio Litvinenko, Minister of Justice. So for those of you who are watching online, you can see on the screen the presentation of Mr. Litvinenko. He'll be the first to speak in this panel. Also, we will have with us connected remotely as a speaker, the Director and Secretary of Venice Commission, Simona Granata Menghini. So she will speak to us from a distance. That's a method that has become so common already. So I don't think if in the future somebody would like to make forums 100% with physical presence. Another speaker will be Victor Munteanu, Program Director, Soros Moldova Foundation, a well-known expert in justice reform. He's always coming with good ideas, and he's a good guest at Free Europe, Radio Free Europe. The interim chairman of the Superior Council of Magistracy, Doriel Musteață, is also with us. Well, actually, he's still coming to Digital Park building. And he is in the traffic jam. You know about the traffic jams in Chisinau, so we hope he will make it in time so that he manages to listen to other presentations and to have the possibility to make his presentation. And again, remotely, we will have the program director of the Legal Resources Center from Moldova, Nadezhda Hribtievski. Also, a person that is coming with sharp messages, at least at the interviews at Radio Free Europe. So let me tell you how we will work for this session. First, we will have a micro survey, which we in journalistic language call Vox Populi. My colleagues from Radio Free Europe made this Vox Populi. So these are opinions collected on the street that will form a kind of introduction to this panel session. And for this panel session, we have set some guidelines for discussion. Also, just very briefly, I will tell you that we will speak about the general vision of justice reform. We would like to speak about the past lessons, and we will set some general directions for the reform. And as Mr. Gribincha has mentioned in his welcoming speech, to make sure that the reform is efficient and irreversible, because as we have a Russian song, I guess. Hopefully, a rare bird will reach our lands. So my point is that hopefully we will set the reform on such a path that it will continue further on without returning back. So let's start these panel discussions to hear the presentations of the distinguished guests. But before that, we will have the Vox Populi, and after that, we'll have a comment by the Legal Resources Center from Moldova. So please.
La noi. Aici trebuie decapitat tot.
Ați avut vreodată de-a face cu sistemul?
N-am avut de-a face, dar după ce văd la televiziune îmi vine să vomit.
Fiecare al doilea om din justiție trebuie fugărit de acolo din justiție. Nu lucrează ei.
Justiția e tare de la noi. Și oamenii se adresează la Europa, la astea și pe urmă plătesc.
European Court, and then lots of money is paid from the state budget. The one that made errors should pay from his or her own pocket. In the past, I thought that judges are correct people, but about 1 year ago, I had some interconnections with the courts, and I saw that they are corrupt. I've always had dogs, and what I can say that when a dog beat a person and felt the taste of blood, you will not correct the dog. You should put the dog to sleep. The same about judges. When they feel the taste of easy money, they will never be able to work and live on a salary only. The bad things in the judiciary is not a recent thing. It roots back in the Soviet Union. So it's very difficult to eradicate it, to eliminate it in a couple of years only. So we have to remove all of the judges and bring from Romanian. So look, a graduate finishes the law department. He or she already comes with the intention to get rich. They are not thinking what to do, to be better prepared, to be honest. But what we could do about this? To remove them, to cut the salaries, to cut the pensions. Who will replace them? Well, to bring from abroad, I don't know. And to decrease the number. There are too many of them, but no justice is made. So now I'm giving the floor to Ilie Kirtoacă, legal advisor at Legal Resources Center from Moldova, for some additional data regarding this Vox Populi. Hello, esteemed participants, esteemed guests. I want to present some measures that will complement the Vox Populi and the discussions that will follow. I will start with public opinion barometer, one of the most trustworthy surveys that is measuring the trust in the judiciary, and we can see the trust in judiciary is not very high. Moreover, in the past 10 years, in spite of all of the reforms, this trust is at low levels. If we are to compare with 2011, when we also launched justice sector reform, and 2021, you can see that the levels are about the same, 18%. The public trust has not changed significantly. So the level of trust is at the same level as in 2011. And this confirms that people have not yet seen a real change produced by reforms. And in spite of the efforts made, they do not have the perceptions that things have improved for better. Another survey conducted by the Legal Resources Center from Moldova among professionals, prosecutors, lawyers, judges in 2020 shows that more than 75% of lawyers and a big percentage of judges, about 15, do not think that judges are independent in their actions. 1 in 7 judges are not sure that their colleagues are independent, and 3 or 4 lawyers have the same opinion. And that's an indicator that we do have a problem with judiciary independence, and this is felt not only by the general population, but by professionals as well who work in the system. If we are to go beyond the national context, to see how the Republic of Moldova is perceived at the regional level, there is another survey, All Justice Project, Rule of Law Index for 2021, that ranks the Republic of Moldova somewhere at the bottom of the list, 111th out of 139 countries in terms of lack of corruption. The situation is a bit better in terms of civil justice, 81 out of 139. And by the way, this survey is also measuring the classification at the local level, and here we are 12 out of 14 and 8 out of 14. And last but not least, criminal justice, 88th out of 139. These are not conclusions necessarily, these are some findings to put the discussions into context, where we should start the reform and to make a general picture of the 2021. Thank you for your attention, and now I'm waiting for the panel speakers. Thank you, Mr. Kirtoaka, for this additional data that somehow opens the way for the first speaker, Minister of Justice, Sergio Litvinenko, please. Good morning, dear organizers, dear viewers of this forum, an event that is very important considering the context of today, when the government is trying its best to start the process. The name of this panel is suggestive, in my opinion, the justice reform in transitional democracies, as Mr. Botnaru has mentioned. Why suggestive? Because in addition to everything, the Republic of Moldova is a democratic country. Our people, especially when they had corrupt governments, have never hesitated to act. In other words, using the power of their vote, they removed corrupted politicians from power, from governing. And I would like to underline the last two such actions, when in 2019, thanks to people, Plahotniuc was removed from the government, from the governance, and in 2021, also thanks to the votes of people, Igor Dodon was removed from the panel of the power. So in Moldova, we had a cleaning of the political class by people, compared to other countries where this cleaning is done by the judiciary or with the help of the judiciary. So I think that for the citizens of the Republic of Moldova that have acted in such a way, it is time now to build a correct, a fair justice sector, which, besides other benefits that can bring, including to the economy, as it was discussed in the introductory part, could in the future not allow the entry of corrupt people in politics, people who follow their own interest and do not want to implement what citizens of Moldova want. Regarding the vision of justice sector reform and where we see ourselves at the end of the 4 years of governance, I will tell you at the end. I want to say that in the government program, which derives from the vote given by citizens of the Republic of Moldova on July 11th, the priorities in the justice sector reform can be grouped in 3 categories: short-term measures, medium-term measures, and long-term measures. Of course, the short-term ones are cleaning the state institutions from compromised people. On the very first day when we came up to governance, we started this process. This is important, at least to stop the thefts from the public sector. Of course, you cannot build strong institutions that are specific to a rule of law in 2, 3, or 4 months, but at least you can appoint managers that want to do this, and we did our best to make sure that this happened. And I believe that there are already cases of people that have a very serious attitude towards their task and have started these processes already. As for the medium and long-term measures, the list is long, so I will highlight the most important ones. Of course, first it is about the external evaluation of judges and prosecutors. I understand that we will have a separate panel discussion focused on this topic, but nevertheless I would like to underline certain things which to my mind are of core importance. So first, we are not doing this reform because we want very much to do it. It would have been much easier for us to make some adjustments of the existing system, but unfortunately, an external assessment, we believe, is the only intervention that can make a genuine change. Attempts to change things from within were made in the past, which unfortunately failed. That is why now we have to intervene using an extraordinary external evaluation of judges and prosecutors. Regarding the timeline for these reforms, of course, myself and the whole society would like for this reform to be implemented as soon as possible. We have heard criticism in the society that in the first month of the government, the law should have been approved and it should have been implemented in the following 2 or 3 months. Well, it's not serious in my opinion, because we have to take into account that the external extraordinary assessment is an extremely important reform which cannot have success unless prepared carefully. And here we have to take into account two elements that makes us hurry but slowly. Festina lenti. First, we have to make sure that all of the international standards related to the extraordinary external assessment are complied with, so that in the future, after we implement this reform, not to have the situation when judges that were removed from the system to go to the European Court of Human Rights and re-enter the system this way. That is why we will not promote this reform until we get the go sign or the green sign from the Venice Commission to confirm that our strategy is in line with international standards. And the second thing, if we are to analyze the experience of other countries that did a similar reform, we can say that such a measure cannot be done without the support and engagement of external partners. That is why for us it is important to make sure that external partners support this reform when we start it. But partners cannot support a reform if it goes against the international standards. That's why I reiterate point number one, the need to make sure that the processes that we want to implement are aligned to standards. And because if partners do not support us, we will end up in a situation when they do not delegate any experts, and we will find ourselves in a situation when we cannot implement the beautifully written law. Another thing that we want to do soon is about the introduction of a careful system of election by general assemblies or by the parliament of the future members of the Superior Council of Magistracy, Superior Council of Prosecutors. So we are thinking to recommend a filter which either at the election of prosecutors or judges or competition to select 3 and then other 3 members of the Superior Council of Magistracy to make sure that all candidates comply with the minimum integrity criteria. And we have started the process. This week we sent to the Venice Commission a draft law in this regard. Of course, to develop strong institutions, people matter the most. The quality of people is very important. But besides people, the institutional framework is also very important. In other words, how the institutions are organized, institutions that are tasked to fight corruption. These days, we can see a ping pong between a number of state institutions that claim that others are responsible for the failure to do something. It's not my fault. It's the fault of the prosecution. No, it's not my fault. It's the fault of police. It's the fault of everybody except me. So, besides other things, our goal is to strengthen the main institution fighting corruption. And I am speaking about big corruption now. We want to have a single structure with the necessary independence, with the necessary human resources, with all of the tools that can be used to fight corruption. And of course, by determining strictly in the law the stakeholders that have to be investigated by this institution. The law should stipulate expressly that this institution should deal exclusively with high-level officials and dignitaries, or those that have connections with politics, because here we have the biggest problem of the Republic of Moldova, the big corruption and the fight against big corruption, which unfortunately was not done so far. And the last thing, so it's about vision. To answer to myself how I would like to see the justice sector in Moldova in 2025, when the mandate of the current parliament ends. First, I would like to see a justice sector that is trusted more by people than now. I would like to see judges and prosecutors who are aware of the fact that it depends on them how just the social order is in this country, so that those who work in an honest way can have a good living in this country, and those who want to make various schemes and earn money in an easy way to have a difficult life, because only a correct justice sector can bring a bright future to the Republic of Moldova. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister. Of course, after this description of the situation of 2025, the only thing I can say is, so let God and external partners help you for you to have enough will and support for that. For example, the support of experts from the Venice Commission. That is represented today by the Director Secretary Simona Granata Menghini. So as I've said, she is with us remotely. So please put us in touch with her, with the Venice Commission.
Good morning. Good morning,
Vorbim
Mr.
românește. Vorbim românește, nu?
So are you speaking Romanian?
I am speaking English.
Okay. Just perfect.
Can I proceed? Can you hear me?
Of course.
Good morning, everyone, Mr. Minister, dear organizers, dear colleagues, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in today's forum and to express the position of the Venice Commission on the direction in which the pending reforms are going. I regret not to be able to be there with you, and I also apologize in advance for having to leave at a certain stage due to previous commitments. The Venice Commission and the Director General of Human Rights and Rule of Law have devoted much attention and efforts to the reform of the judiciary and the prosecution service in the Republic of Moldova. The Venice Commission adopted no less than 6 opinions on these matters in 2019 and 2020. 2 more opinions are in preparation. We have heard it on the amendments to the law on the prosecution service, on the pre-vetting of candidates for the Superior Council of Magistrates and the Superior Council of Prosecutors, and our assessment on the evaluation of the integrity and professionalism of judges and prosecutors is in the pipeline. This is a lot of work on our part. This is a lot of work on the part of the Moldovan authorities. The Moldovan authorities have pledged to carry out a ruthless fight against corruption and to achieve a judiciary complying with integrity and professionalism requirements. The Council of Europe and the Venice Commission support this endeavor. Much has already been said about the urgent need for an independent judiciary in the Republic of Moldova, and we all agree that independence is an indispensable feature of the judiciary in a modern democratic state. But I would like to stress at the outset that we must not only see the independence of the judiciary as a structural element of the state, a skillful combination of provisions in the Constitution. We must think of it first and foremost as the key to the realization of the absolute rights and the legitimate aspiration of every Moldovan to have his or her fundamental rights protected by the courts of the country in an independent and impartial manner. Without an independent judiciary, the fundamental rights of every Moldovan remain on paper. Without an independent judiciary, there may not be a fair trial, there may not be reforms, and there may not be genuine change. There may not be the consecration of everyone's dignity. The independence of the judiciary is not an end in itself. It is not a personal privilege of the judges. It is only justified as the means to enable the judges to fulfill their role of guardians of the rights and freedoms of the people. The judiciary must benefit, and we have heard these aspects a lot this morning, it must benefit from the respect and the trust of the population. Without this, it may not fulfill its role. Without this, there is a high risk that alternative means of settling disputes will be looked for and eventually found. A culture of illegality will then settle in. A modern democratic constitution must therefore contain solid guarantees for the independence of the judiciary, both external, which means independence from undue external influence, and internal, which means independence from undue hierarchical influence within the judiciary itself. That's so, as the Venice Commission constantly argued, and this has been recommended by the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe in its famous Recommendation 94/2012, and by the Consultative Council of European Judges, opinion number 1. Respect for the independence of the judiciary from the other branches of power, that is the executive and the legislature, but also from the parties, is required by the European Convention on Human Rights, as well as by many other universal and regional human rights instruments. But the independence of the judiciary must also be respected by the other branches of power and by the public. At the constitutional level, rules have to be designed in such a way as to guarantee the selection of high qualified and personally reliable judges, and to define settings in which judges can work without being unduly subjected to external influence. There are two kinds of guarantees for judicial independence: the guarantees on the manner of appointment of the judges, and the guarantees of security of tenure and immovability of the judges. They are complementary and evidently both necessary. A system of appointment of judges without influence of politics would be frustrated if the judges were not subsequently given protection to remain free from external influence. But this protection would be counterproductive if it were afforded to judges who have not been appointed independently in the first place. In Moldova, the constitutional reform of the judiciary has been a lengthy and complex process, which has finally been accomplished in September, when Parliament adopted the constitutional amendments prepared by the previous government with the assistance of the Venice Commission and of the Council of Europe. These amendments were adopted with an exceptionally broad agreement in Parliament, and this is an encouraging, important sign that an independent judiciary is a shared goal. I cannot but express, on behalf of the Venice Commission personally and on behalf of the Council of Europe, our greatest satisfaction for this achievement. These amendments are in line with international standards and with the Venice Commission's recommendations, and have the potential to improve the independence, accountability, and efficiency of the judiciary. These amendments have introduced positive features, such as notably the removal of probationary period for judges, the appointment of judges of the Supreme Court of Justice by the President with a one-time veto, the regulation of functional immunity at the constitutional level, the composition of the Superior Council of Magistrates, where at least half of the members are judges elected by their peers, and the judge members represent all levels of courts of law, and lay members are elected in Parliament with a qualified majority after competitive and transparent selection. And then the consultative role of the Superior Council of Magistrates in the preparation of the budget of the judiciary. Ladies and gentlemen, constitutional reform is a necessary and important first step in the process, but does certainly not constitute the completion of the process. The new constitutional provisions on judicial independence need to be implemented. And implementation entails at least two distinct processes: the adoption of corollary legislation. This is the first aspect, and we know that a process of external evaluation of the integrity and professionalism of judges and prosecutors is being considered. As the Venice Commission has expressed in the past in other contexts, critical situations in the field of the judiciary, as extremely high levels of corruption, may justify equally radical solutions, such as vetting processes of the sitting judges and prosecutors. In the end, it falls ultimately within the competence of the Moldovan authorities to decide whether the prevailing situation in the Moldovan judiciary creates sufficient basis for the radical decision of subjecting all the sitting judges and prosecutors to this external evaluation. However, vetting processes are extremely complex and inevitably present drawbacks. The process has to be created carefully so that such drawbacks do not overcome the benefits. Vetting processes generate very high expectations in the public, but they can also lead to deep disappointments. The authorities of Moldova seem to be well aware of these challenges. The Venice Commission will be asked to assess the law on the vetting. You have heard Minister Litvinenko. Let me just indicate the criteria which will be used in making this assessment. The vetting process under consideration does not seem to entail a constitutional change. This means that it will need to be designed strictly within the constitutional framework, the one which will enter into force in April 2022. International participation in the process may work as a guarantee for its success, but needs to be designed with due respect for the constitutional competencies of the relevant institutions. Proportionality and due process will need to be fully respected. A choice will need to be made about how far the process will be taken, whether it will concern only the apex courts and guarantee institutions, or whether it will be extended to other and even to all court levels. This process will also need to be limited in time. The duration needs to be realistically calculated and indicated, and therefore be respected. Public expectations are for the evaluation to be implemented as quickly as possible. We have just heard it. But experience shows that if they are conducted well, these processes tend instead to last more than expected. If the duration of the vetting needs to be limited, the duration of the preparation of the process needs to be sufficiently long as to enable to take into account all the elements and also the expertise of the Council of Europe and of the Venice Commission, and to enable inclusive discussions involving all the political forces, the stakeholders, and the public. An intermediate process is being considered, the pre-vetting of the candidates of the Superior Council of Magistrates and of the Superior Council of Prosecutors. We have heard Minister Litvinenko before, while the assessment of the relevant draft law is pending for opinion. I can say that the approach is welcome. The judicial reform is based on a strong role of the Superior Council of Magistrates and of Prosecutors, and its integrity is essential. The second aspect of the implementation of the constitutional reform is the application of the new rules. Let me underline that application concerns a multitude of actors and stakeholders. In the first place, Parliament, when it comes to appointing lay members, and I stress the importance of doing so with broad agreement among political forces, the President, when it comes to appointing the judges of the Supreme Court, the government, when it comes to appointing to giving up sufficient and appropriate means to the judiciary, all state institutions when it comes to respecting the independence of the judiciary, to refraining from exercising pressure on it, and to cooperating loyally with it. It concerns the judges themselves in the choice of the members of the Superior Council of Magistracy, in their respect for the rules of integrity, in their understanding of functional immunity, in their professional restraint. It concerns, obviously, the Superior Council of Magistrates, the Superior Council of Prosecutors, in the supervision of the rules on integrity. It also concerns the public, as parties in the judicial proceedings, and as general public. It concerns the press, it concerns civil society. They have a right and a duty to monitor the performance of the judicial system, respecting, however, its independence. There is a role for the Council of Europe as well. While the choices are for the Moldovan institutions and people to make, we are ready to assist you in devising viable solutions which meet international standards. We can help you benefit from the experience and the mistakes, as has been stressed this morning, of other countries. Ladies and gentlemen, achieving an independent judiciary is a global and continuing effort. It requires commitment and time. Can this reform be irreversible? I personally do not believe in irreversibility. Experience has shown that we should never take democratic process for granted. There is always a risk that the independence of the judiciary be challenged directly or indirectly. However, the reform can be sustainable if it is interpreted and implemented in the framework of the Constitution and of the principles of democracy, the rule of law, and respect for human rights. Failing to respect these principles, which entail inclusiveness, transparency, accountability, may defeat the very purpose of the reform. The Venice Commission and Director General understand and commend the efforts of the Moldovan authorities aimed at building up a judiciary complying with integrity and professionalism requirements. They appreciate the willingness of the Moldovan authorities to consult us and follow our recommendations, and they stand ready to assist them in this endeavor. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, dear Simona Granata Menghini. Let me use my position of moderator and ask you